Books or audiobooks? Well, if memory is important to you, you probably want to do books. But if you're anything like me, you probably research, should I do books or audiobooks? And all these blogs are saying they're no different. But these guys have not done the research like I have, or haven't even looked at what Japanese neuroscientists have come to the conclusion that when you read off of paper, what happens? We have better comprehension and memory of what we're learning versus digital. Looking at a digital screen, but not even just digital, audio. So let's map out the pros and cons because there's still great things about audiobooks. Let's look at it. Pros, tonality. You gotta listen to tonality. You've got Tony Robbins talking to you. You hear his heart. Isn't that nice? You can hear the emotion. But the cons, the flip side is that tonality is not always available. And one, some of these speakers are just awful. Or there's also not even there's no audiobook available. So if you're someone who's rigorously audiobook, sometimes you stumble upon a book with no audio. So what happens? You don't get to get that information. So it's better to be well-rounded and be a good book reader and almost just love it, okay? Pros of audiobooks, you get to multitask. The con of audiobooks is that you get to multitask. It is a huge negative. Just go read books on productivity and the neuroscience of multitasking. It's not real. You just get a lot of task switching. I'll let you do that research. Go look at Stephen Kotler, who's a world-class high-performance coach, or just look at anyone that's about flow and focus. 3, you can drive. You can do other things. You can do dishes. Things that don't take up a lot of attentional space, it's great for you to do. Driving does not take up a lot of attentional space. But if you're doing something that actually threads the needle, writing, making calls, things that take up your full attentional space that most people lack. Most people just do superficial busy work like emails, things like that. If you're a CEO, you know that your people probably aren't working 8 hours a day straight as hard as you are, right? Multitasking, BS. You need to get better at focus. If focus is important to you, you need to know that the con of audiobooks is that they are not a focus enhancer. Focus does what for you? 10 hours worth of work in 1 hour. You probably want to get better at focus. That's why I am on day 29 of a 1-hour meditation every day, because the neuroscience shows it enhances everything in your life. Go ahead and feel free and comment if you have more questions or if you want me to do a whole video on my experience with meditation and what that does for you. Let's continue. Audiobooks are actually slower than reading speed. Not a lot of people know that. So 1,000 words read, 1,000 words per minute read, can take 1.8 minutes for a college professor according to Forbes with reading speeds. But that same 1,000 words per minute spoken to you through an audiobook or a video like this would take 7 minutes. So look at that, 7 minutes to consume 1,000 words or 1.8 minutes. If you're a CEO and you have no time to read, you definitely want to improve your reading efficiently. You want to be effective. So reading is what? The number one learning medium. Why? Because if information, the quality of information is important to you, you want to read. 2, speed, critical. Let's look at speed. Out of all the 34 different mediums, books win. Look at that difference right there. 600 words per minute isn't even a crazy, I wouldn't even call that speed reading, but that is almost 2 to 3 times faster than the average reader, okay? Audiobooks, 150 words per minute. Audiobook at 2 times speed, 300 words per minute, right? Double. But again, reading is obviously faster, okay? Next thing is that audiobooks don't have as many learning styles involved. All right, potentially in a separate video, but I'll cover a little bit of it here, is that decades of research has shown that you are not an audible or visual learner, quote unquote. They've done the research, so they're like, okay, so you're an audible learner. Audible learners should be able to learn faster and better and retain more and comprehend more if we just give them audible learning tasks versus just other people. Turns out that's not true. The real answer is including more learning styles, using more of your senses, and becoming more of an active learner when you learn. So that means using audio, audible, visual, and kinesthetic, all these different senses with your learning. And what does reading have? It has the visual. You have graphs. You're looking at graphs. You have kinesthetic, you could feel the paper. Also, spatial memory is activated with your brain with a book, because you think like, okay, well, that story, that fact was around the back of the book or the front of the book. Just you being able to say that or think about that adds another connection point that lets that information stay in your brain so you could recall it later. You don't have that with audiobooks. Audiobooks are just a blur. Okay? Whoa, all right, sorry, it's a little windy out here in Texas. Let's continue. Our next thing that we're talking about, less learning styles. Audio, you usually sound it out a little bit in your head when you read a book. All right, so that's another thing that's very important. Another con of audiobooks is that you're more of a passive learner and you're not an active learner. And the prerequisite to memory is what? Focus. If you don't have deep focus while you're learning, you're missing out. Also, another thing is that FOMO. FOMO, fear of missing out, that because you're focusing on one book, one piece of information at a time, you feel like, well, I've got to go do something. I've got to go run around. I've got to move around. I've got to go clean this. I've got to clean that. That's a big issue. If you feel like you have ADD or ADHD, maybe you do. Okay, look, if you're self-diagnosed, that's an issue. Get that out of the gate. But if you do have those diagnoses, these tactics and this playlist will really help you. You should also read Gabor Mate's books, and like one of his books, Scattered Minds. But don't let these issues that you have block you, because even Richard Branson, billionaire, a dyslexic, he knows Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins talks about him in his book, Money Masters the Game. And what did he say? He said that Richard Branson still read books, and Richard Branson still reads, and then dyslexic people are actually, that is actually a superpower. Dyslexia is a superpower. I have a book in my room about how, a whole book that helps dyslexic people rewire their brains to read, love reading, and be good at it. But that's a whole process. We're not talking about that. I'm just sharing this so you understand these things that you thought you could not solve with your brain and reading or learning can be solved, and other people have done it. You just have to actually accept it can be done. If you don't want to change, I cannot help you. But if you're watching this video, you probably want to change, you probably want to improve, you probably want to increase your IQ. So the next topic that we have in the video, in this playlist, we'll talk about book summaries and how you should use them. It'll be a short video.